Hello everyone, and welcome to my beginner's guide to the Contention server in DCS World. This is a relatively new server, but has really drawn me and a huge number of other players in. It is really something impressive, but it does have a huge amount of systems and can be a bit unnerving for first-time players wanting to jump in. So I want to break down the basics here. I'm certainly not going to be able to fit everything into this one video without it being about an hour and a half long, but I will be doing a series where I do deep dives on the individual systems going a bit later. For now, this video is really just focused on what you need to know to be able to get in the server for the first time, do your first couple of sorties, and hopefully help your team out. So let's jump in and see what it's all about. So first of all, what is Contention's DCS server? Well, the short answer is it's Enigma's Cold War server set a little bit later, but with a lot more depth and more systems and more flexibility to it. So it's a late Cold War server. It does alternate what time zones it is set in, but mostly it is on the 80s setup, which will have access to the vast majority of airframes in DCS World, but eliminates Fox 3 missiles. There is a 90s setting which the server will go to, which does include Fox 3 missiles, including Lua-hacked Fox 3 missiles for things like the MiG-29. And there is a 70s rotation, which has a little more limited armaments. It is a dynamic campaign server, so just like Enigma's Cold War, it takes place across multiple days, very often multiple weeks, as the two sides push back and forth across the area, aiming to capture territory and finally force the enemy right back to their home base. So in terms of what you need to do to actually push the front line here, what we do is we capture airfields and we capture FARPs. The winning team is the team that manages to capture all of the critical FARPs and airfields on the enemy side. You can tell which ones these are on the F10 map, as they will have a large circle around them, as well as the normal smaller circle which indicates what side currently owns that airfield or that FARP. As for how you capture these, it is pretty intuitive. You wipe out all enemy assets in that airfield, and then you put your own assets in place. Once the airfield or FARP has no more enemy units in it, it will turn from red to white and it will become neutral. At this point, the enemy can no longer spawn there, they can no longer rearm there, and they can no longer deploy any units there without using helicopters or similar. The base is not yours though, instead you need to land additional troops. Helicopters can bring these in, as can World War II props, or units can be controlled via the various JTAC screens using combined arms and manually moved into enemy territory. Now for airfields, there is one additional thing, is that each airfield does have a headquarters building which needs to be eliminated beforehand. This is a large building in the centre of the airfield that can be upgraded from a very lightly armed barracks to a heavily reinforced concrete bunker, making very good targets for your 2,000-pound JDAM bombs. Now once a neutral base does have a single friendly unit in it, it will immediately be captured, and from there you can call in reinforcement flights, you can spawn at the airfield if it is one of the spawnable airfields, and you can rearm and repair there. Now in addition to these primary targets of the airfields and FARPs, there are also a whole host of secondary targets, either small capture points, which are just marked on the map with letter designations, or larger factory depot complexes, naval convoys, all of which are marked on the map, These play into the resource system that runs in the background, and so targeting these, although will not directly win you the campaign, will give your team more resources to pump out more ground units to help you indirectly push through, and can be absolutely vital. All of these are found on the map, and these I will be giving their own videos to later. Also linked to this system are various other airborne targets of opportunity, including a supply aircraft the enemy have called in, and bombers that occasionally spawn that you either need to escort or destroy, and again these will majorly impact the number of resources your team has available. Now, to help you find what ground targets to prosecute, we've got the F10 map. Shows whether a base is controlled by red or blue based on the colour of it, and very nicely we have this little traffic light system on the left hand side of every airfield and FARP that gives us an indication to its current condition. So for the airfields, they all have 3 dots on top of them. The top dot gives you the information as to the state of the HQ. Purple indicates that the HQ is currently repairing. Red means it has been completely destroyed. Orange, yellow and green show levels 1, 2 and 3, showing you how defended the airfield is. So an orange base, you don't need that much explosive to take out its HQ. If it's a green base though, you're going to be wanting to bring your big bunker busters. The second circle then is the reinforcement strength. This is the sum of all ground units currently alive in that sector. Remember, you want to reduce this to 0 in order to capture this. So if the circle is red, there are 0 units. That should then, within moments, turn neutral. If it is orange, there are between 1 and 9 units alive. Yellow means between 10 and 19 units alive. And green means there are 20 units alive. This is within that inner circle, the shaded circle within the airfield's zone of control. And this is the sum of both air defences and ground units such as tanks. So you can absolutely have an airfield that is yellow or orange, but still having no anti-air missile systems. It might just be a bunch of tanks. On the other hand, you could have an orange airfield where all 9 targets happen to be SAM systems, so it is just a vague indication as to what you can expect going in. The very bottom circle is what they call the culling status. In order to improve the performance of the server, airfields that are not currently near enemy units do not have their ground units simulated. Instead, they are culled, and so for these rear airfields, they will have a purple dot at the very bottom, indicating that culling is active, and there are no actual units on the airfield. If an enemy unit does get too close to it, the airfield will activate, and this will become green in colour, and all of the units that were there before culling will be reintroduced. So it's just a way of improving the server's performance, and really you don't have to worry about it much at all. Now the FARP uses a very similar system, but because FARPs don't have headquarters, there is no FARP indicator for headquarters. So we just get the 2 lights. The top one is indicating the reinforcement strength, exact same red to green indications as before. The bottom light is again the culling status as to whether the airfield has its units active or not. And then the final indication that is worth knowing about is if an airfield is currently under attack, that is, if a unit has been destroyed within its zone of control in the last few minutes, it will be highlighted with a yellow circle that overlays the red or the blue circle. Additionally, there will be a pop-up in the top right corner to give you an indication that this airfield is under attack, and this will help guide CAP units to defend the active airfields. Now, finally, to help you find the action, there is an EWR system that is activated by default. It is very similar to the one that you may have come across in Enigma's Cold War, just gives slightly more detail with a slightly lower refresh rate, but it pops up in the top right corner, just as in Enigma's Cold War, listing the closest nearest 6 enemies. You can also use the comms menu F10 to ask it for friendly bogey dopes and AI status. One thing to be aware of is this is not an all-seeing eye system. It will only show enemies that are detected by your EWR network, so your ground-based radar and your AWACS will all be feeding into this, and so if you can see it on the data link, it will appear up there in the top corner. However, if something is hiding, if it is ground masking, or if simply you do not have radar coverage in that area, say your EWR systems have been taken out, then things can absolutely sneak up on you. So it's a very useful guide, but do not use it as a be-all and end-all. Also, bear in mind that there are several units that are permanently hidden from the EWR system. This is all helicopters, all World War II props, and the trainers are hidden from EWR. When it comes to what modules you need to install to be able to join the server, there really aren't many. At the time of recording, the only active campaigns are Syria and Caucasus, which alternate between the 80s and 90s rotations. The server uses no mods, so there is nothing that you need to install, and when it comes to what aircraft you can use, the answer is pretty much yes. If it is in DCS, you can fly it on this server. So that includes your modern aircraft such as F-18s, F-16s, can all absolutely be used. They do come with weapon restrictions, as I said. For the 80s rotation, it's Fox 1 and Fox 2s only, as well as no JSOW weapons. 90s rotation is pretty much free and clear for everything. But you can also use all of the helicopters within the game, you can use the trainers, and you can absolutely take World War II planes into this. And the World War II planes absolutely are not just a gimmick, because they're hidden on EWR, that gives you good flexibility, and the helicopters, trainers, and the World War II birds all fit in to the logistics system, being able to deploy and move around troops, and they also all come with the ability to use the forward air controller system, where you can call in artillery, mark targets, laze targets for others. Now, the only exception here is there are no modded aircraft within the server at time of writing, so none of the A4 or anything like that is available, but every single other actual DCS module is in there. So that is the quick overview in a nutshell. I am trying to keep this particular video as brief as possible, just so people can use it just to pop on and get the basics they need to jump into the server. Now, I have barely scratched the surface on what this server offers. I will be doing a lot more videos in the future covering each individual system, from that forward artillery controller system I mentioned, to the massive logistics system, to controlling ground units, and everything else that this server has, all of its variety of targets, background mechanics. There is just a staggeringly huge amount. That is too much for one video. So I hope you'll join me for those, and I hope this has given you enough to jump into this server and have a hell of a fun time in your first session. Until next time, remember to be kind to yourselves and everyone else. Cheers.